Welcome to Coffee Cocktails, and more importantly, welcome to California! I'm here for a couple months for work, and it's been great so far. This is the corporate housing apartment they put me in, and it's fine, but you know, it doesn't have quite as much room as my old place does. No room for a big green screen in the back where I can put that big CGI kitchen set that I always use, but it's been great. Recently, my family and I went to Seattle to visit some relatives we hadn't seen in a very long time. It was also excellent. It was a wonderful time. We went to Pike Place Public Market, which was just a bonanza of delicious food and wonderful vendors and shops. And there was a place called Indie Chocolate. Wonderful little chocolate cafe. They had some excellent sipping chocolates. And there I purchased a bag of unroasted cocoa beans. I've had this idea for a while now and I want to experiment with it. What happens when you brew cocoa like it's coffee? And how does it taste? And the answer is just kind of okay. Just fine, not bad. Not terrible, not bad. Better than so-so, but not as good as so-so-so. It's okay. So cocoa is an interesting product. Like coffee, it is a bean, a pod, a seed, something like that, botanically speaking. It's a vegetable of some kind. Like coffee, it is also, after it is picked, covered in a fruit substance that needs to be removed. The bean is then fermented for many days. This is a process I actually went through with my dad a while back. It's a lot of work. And at that point, then you have the raw bean. It is then roasted, prepared and packaged, and then you grind it and do stuff with it. This has had everything done to it before the roasting step. So a couple things. I first wanted to see how different roast levels of cocoa beans affect the flavor on its own and also when brewed in a drink like this. Cocoa is roasted at a much lower temperature than you might think of when you hear roasting. I roast vegetables at 400, 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Cocoa beans, the best way I found was to roast these in a normal oven, not convection, at 275 Fahrenheit. It works fine. I did a series of experiments where I roasted them for longer and longer periods of time. I tracked the results, and the end result seems to be darker is better. A 30-minute roast ended up great, stirring a couple times in the middle. If you want to do that, you can roast those beans, and then the next step is winnowing the beans. These cocoa beans have had their skins removed, sort of like a pistachio nut. After it's roasted, the skin that's on it loosens up and is easy to remove. You just take it and press it a little bit and peel the skin off. The skins are so light that they will fly kind of all over the place and make a big mess of the kitchen. One thing that you can do though is take a box fan and set it next to the bowl you're winnowing in so that as you peel the beans, the skins fly everywhere and make a huge mess in your kitchen. Or you could do it outside. Once you've done that, you have a cocoa bean, and then if you crush it up a little bit, you can get a cocoa nib or a cacao nib. I'm sure there's a difference, but I use the terms interchangeably. At that point, you can just go ahead and skip all that and buy pre-packaged, pre-roasted, pre-winnowed cacao nibs at the grocery store. And honestly, that's what I plan to do from here once I run out of this wonderful batch of cocoa. It's just easier. What I've wanted to experiment with for a while is grinding coffee and cocoa together or separately and see what kind of drink results in that. So my experiments of that did go pretty well. I tried a lot of different things with a lot of different coffees, methods, all different variables to play with. So what I've learned is a couple things. My first experiments were to replace half the coffee I would normally use in a recipe with cocoa beans instead. That was not quite as good as it could be. There was just not enough coffee flavor in the drink, and the cocoa flavor was still there, but it didn't have anything to pair with. So what I eventually settled on that seems to work with a variety of methods is to brew a normal coffee recipe with a normal amount of coffee, augment that with half as much by weight of cocoa beans, and then add the normal amount of water and brew for the normal amount of time. That seems to be pretty universally a working method. So the things that I've noticed on that is that immersion brewing methods like pour over certainly work, but I suppose that coffee and the flavors inside it more readily dissolve in hot water when compared to cocoa. So a method like a pour over just didn't have enough contact time with the hot water to give it a real good cocoa flavor. I used a flat bottom pour over brewer, which even has a longer contact time than a conical brewer like a V60, and even then it wasn't enough. So my best results came from AeroPress and French press methods, both immersion methods. And what I would do is, as I mentioned, you just take a normal amount of normal amount of coffee rather. In this case, I did 20 grams in this French press, and then half that much, 10 grams of cocoa, and you grind them and you brew them. When you grind, I first recommend, whether you're using home roasted beans or store-bought cacao nibs, refrigerating them or even freezing them beforehand. Cocoa beans have a lot more oil than coffee beans do. And if you've ever ground peanuts into peanut butter, you'll notice that that oil makes it more into a paste or a sludge rather than the dry, floury powder that coffee does when you grind it. So by cooling and therefore solidifying the oil, that makes it grind a lot more consistently, and it prevents a big mess from forming in your grinder. I don't have my big electric grinder. I didn't want to bring that across the country with me, so I brought my little Porlex Mini. This is the first coffee grinder I used. It is excellent. What I'll need to do is increase the setting on this by 50 or even 100%, double the grind size to get a similar end product with cocoa. So if I set this to, say, 4 clicks to grind coffee, I would need to set it to 7 or 8 clicks to grind the same relative rough consistency that for cocoa. Other than that, it's pretty simple. I grind the cocoa first, because if there is any mess that comes, the coffee sort of clears it out afterward, and then you just brew as normal. The only other caveat I've noticed is that cocoa seems to produce a lot more fine powder than coffee does. So if you go to use a French press, I found that I gotta really push this hard. So I'm not even comfortable pressing it onto a ceramic mug. I've been using a metal carafe to push it down and then just pour it in later. And so right here then I have a French press brewed in that method. Let's see how it tastes. Oh no, it's doing this again. Sir? Sir? Excuse me, sir? Sir? Excuse me, sir? 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 And how does it taste? Good. Just good. It's not amazing. It's not mind-blowing. It's not the new thing everyone has to go out and do. It's interesting. Quite honestly, you might like this better or worse than a non-cocoa-tized cup of coffee. I've tried this with a few different types of beans. I've tried it with this wonderful geisha from Onyx. I've tried it with grocery store coffee, and it's roughly the same amount of change either way. So this is still an excellent cup of coffee. It just has its wonderful fruity flavors, in some ways augmented by the acidity and the brightness of this cocoa. There's a slightly different type of fruit flavor in that. But also it is mellowed out and rounded out a little bit. It's different. It's not really, in my opinion, better or worse. It's different. So I'll do this sometimes, but not a lot. I do think there is something interesting to this method, though. I will continue to experiment with it, and I will definitely want to see about some other recipes. I think you can make a really good sweetened mocha, a dessert beverage, basically, with something involving these ingredients, for sure. So I will keep at it, and if you have any recipes that you found with cocoa and coffee, definitely let me know. I'm always interested in trying new things. So that'll just about do it today. Remember, if you want to support the channel, you can do so by watching every episode of the TV show Psych. It really helps. I'll see you later.